Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how to make this easy beaded macrame bracelet that's graduated as well. So this is what it looks like. So it's graduated because we have the larger beads and the edge there in the middle, and then it graduates to gradually smaller, going all the way along to the ends. On one end there we have then a loop, and the other end there's the button, so that's a closure. So that's what the bracelet looks like. And then it sits like this on the wrist, so you can see that graduation in it gives that really nice look to it all the way around. And then we just use the button and loop closure there on the end to then also have it nice and easy to take on and off. So there you go, and that also adds a nice decorative touch there. Obviously depending what button you use, that's completely up to you. You can really choose whatever you want to. So that's a bracelet. So if you want to learn how to make this, then keep watching. So these are the materials that I'm going to be using. Here I have the cord. This is a 1mm satin cord I'm using in this case, but that's just what I'm working with for this specific one. You can really use many different types of cord. And then I have my different beads here. Now they're all metal spacer beads. Some are just copper and then some silver. So the first ones here are some 3mm copper ones. Then I have 4mm silver, and then 6mm and also 8mm silver. So these silver ones are what I'm going to be using in the middle of the bracelet, and the copper ones in this case here are going to be on the edge. But the most important thing, no matter what beads you use, is that the ones that are running through the middle will be able to take 2 lengths of your cord going through them. And the ones on the edge just need 1 length of cord. So this is also why I really like to use metal spacer beads when I know I need to get several lengths of cord through, because they do tend to have generous holes. And I just really like the look that they give as well. But then finally, I just need my button here. So this is a shank button. And it looks like this. It has just that one hole on the back. We're going to put our cords through. So I'm going to use this for the closure. So let's get all the materials ready and let's get started. So then we'll need some lengths of cord. First of all here, we need 2 lengths of 2.2 meters. So these are the longest ones. And then we need another 2 lengths here of the same cord of about 70 centimeters each. And finally, the last 2 lengths here need to be 50 centimeters each. So then the first thing we need to do is make the loop. So I'm going to take my 2 longest cords, and then first of all we need to find the midpoint of one of them. So I'm going to put the 2 ends together. So like that. And then that gives me the midpoint. What I'm then going to do is attach this to my mini macrame board that I'm just going to be working on. And I'm just going to use these notches, making sure I keep that midpoint in the middle of the board, just so I know for reference where it is. Attach it to the board here. On both sides, just like that. I'm just going to attach it so it's going to stay in place. I like to kind of wrap it around the slots like that here, and then it definitely won't move anywhere while we're working with it, because obviously it's going to be a bit annoying if the holding cord that we're making knots on, it's going to end up keep getting loose. So this really helps wrapping the cords around like that. And then going to take the other length that we need to attach to it, and again do the same thing, find the midpoint in the same way by putting the ends together. And then I have this little loop, so I'm just going to keep hold of that, and we need to attach that to the holding cord on the board with a lax head knot. So I'm going to come from above and then just lift up the holding cord, put my loop here underneath, and then bring it back over the top of the holding cord, put your fingers through and then pull the ends of the cord through the loop, and then we'll pull it down and tighten it just like that. And that's now a lax head knot, and this cord is now attached to the holding cord. And in order to then be able to make the loop, we need to make a length of knots here that's going to then turn into the loop. So what we need to do is use these 2 lengths coming from the knot, and then kind of build knots along the side of this one here in the middle. So I'm just going to show you here on one side. We just take the cord that's coming naturally towards the right and working on the right side with that. I'm going to bring this back over the top of the holding cord, and then back underneath, and then pull it up through the loop. So it loops around the holding cord in this direction, and then pull it tight. And then we need to go underneath from the bottom, bring it back around and over the top, And remember to bring it through the loop. Always remember to bring it through the loop there, because that's what creates the knot. And then tighten that. And then you'll find you're going to have the exact same thing that we did before sitting right next to it. So the same knot, but obviously we just made it using one cord now instead of the same cord with the two ends attaching it. And that's how we make the knots continuing this way. Same thing on the other side, obviously just in a mirrored image. Take the cord, bring it over the top, back underneath and through the loop, and tighten it right close to the first one. And then we need to go underneath, back around and through the loop, and then tighten that. And there we go. So now I have 3 knots sitting right next to each other. Now you want to keep doing this, build it on both sides. I recommend you do the same amount of knots on both sides there from the middle, just to use up the cords, the lengths of them there evenly. And how long you need this to be really depends on the button that you're using. So then I have my row of knots here, and then the way to measure if it's going to fit with your button is to take it off, and then we need to shape it into the loop. So just like this, put the 2 ends together, and then I'm just going to hold them together, because obviously I just want to make sure that it's the right size for the button. So like that. Then I'm going to try it and see if it fits nicely. So obviously that it'll go through so it's not too small, and that fits perfectly. But also you want to make sure that the loop isn't too big, because that can make it a little bit too loose and not as secure to wear. So this fits perfectly now. So that's just how you want to check with your button and the materials that you use. So I then switched over to work on my project macrame board here, and then using some pins as well, because now I'm pinning this down the loop to make it sit how I want it to, because obviously we need to fasten it in place. And I'm also going to continue working on this board. So what I'm going to do is I have the 2 cords coming straight down. That's the holding cord running through all the knots, and they're just coming straight down next to each other. And then I have the 2 cords here that were the working cords. So what I'm going to do is make a square knot using those working cords around the 2 holding cords. So just bring one side over them, the other one goes over that, underneath everything in the middle, and then up through this loop here on the first side. Doesn't matter what side you start from with your square knots, as long as you stay consistent. And then I'm going to tighten this. You can see, tighten that right up underneath the loop, so right at the end, or both ends rather, of this whole row of knots. That's going to hold it together, and then start from the other side to finish the knot the exact same way, just in a mirrored image, and tighten that as well. And that's now a full square knot, and that's going to hold that loop in place. So we then reach the middle section of the bracelet that we need to make, and what I'm going to do is start out from one end here and work my way across all the way to the other end. We're going to build it along the way. So again, we have these 2 holding cords coming from that knot. I'm just going to separate them, and then I'm going to take the left one first of all, take the outer one of the 2 left ones, I'm going to bring that underneath the inner one, and then we're going to make a double half hitch. So that means I'm going to bring the working cord is this one here that's coming underneath, and the holding cord is going out to the side from the middle. Then I'm going to take the working cord around a finger and around the cord there and back through the loop. So it loops around the holding cord in this direction, and then I'm going to pull this all the way down and tighten the knot, and make sure I'm holding the holding cord a bit at an angle going out to the side, and then once more for a double half hitch, just like that. So that's one side, and I'm going to put these out of the way, go to the other side and repeat doing exactly the same. So I have these 2 cords, the outer one goes underneath the inner one, and then starts looping around the cord back over the top and then back underneath, and then making sure it comes through the loop of itself to create the knot. So we kind of get a 6 here that's looping around the holding cord. And again, as you tighten this, make sure you hold the holding cord at an angle out to the side. Once more for a double, just like that. And it's almost so we have a 90-degree angle between the 2 rows here that we started out, coming out underneath that square knot. So now what we need to do is actually add our first bead. So then take my first 4mm round here, and you want to add that onto both of these cords in the same direction. So the cords are going through the bead in the same direction. And you just want to pull it down. Obviously it's a small bead, so it's a little bit of a tight fit, but the cords do go through. And then it needs to come all the way down and sit basically right in that little corner from the angle of making the rose. So push it all the way up and make sure it's going to sit nicely just in there. And then what we need to do is kind of cage it in. So go back to using the outer cords. And I'm going to start on one side again. So I'm bringing the outer cord in towards the middle again. And this is going to be the holding cord. And we then have the bead, sorry, the cord that's coming out from the bead there. Just separate them out as well. It's coming underneath the outer one. And then the cord that's coming from the bead and it's going underneath is the working cord. Then I'm going to make a double half hitch again. So around your finger and through the loop. So you get that 6. And then I'm tightening this all the way up, and it's going to end up sitting right on the side of the bead and kind of come back in towards the middle. Another one to make it that double. Just like that. And it's going to make a nice kind of shape and curve around the bead. Same on the other side. Bring the outer cord in over towards the middle, and then take the one coming from the bead that we haven't used yet and make a double half hitch and then tighten that. And you can see we're now getting the same thing on this side here. So both sides are going to look the same, and then we're left with these two holding cords in the middle. So what I'm going to do is just cross one over the other. I always naturally take the right one over the left one, but it doesn't really matter as long as you stay consistent. And then I'm just going to, because the left one comes underneath, so that's a working cord, I'm going to do a double half hitch with that to connect this little point as well, because otherwise obviously it's still open, and we want this to be like a complete little shape we have around the bead. So that's what it then looks like. But then before we make the next one, just like I showed you here, we'll need to just add some more beads. And this is to the outer cords now. So what I'm going to do is add one of my copper beads on each side. So just like that. Push it all the way down. It's going to sit right there in that little corner, fitting nicely. And then same on the other side, so it's ready. So there we go. And then we basically just need to repeat the same thing. So that's also going to cage in these outer beads by doing that. So I'm just going to start out, bring the outer one under, start on one side at a time, and then make your double half hitch. And you can see that bead is going to stay right there in that corner. And just add that bit extra embellishment. Same thing with the other side. Bring that under. So we start out getting this angle between the two rows. And then tighten that down. So there we go, now ready to add in the other bead in the middle, just like I showed you here. And then you need to do this several more times. So this is also where you obviously want to decide how you want yours to be. So what sizes you want, how many times, but also maybe depending on the size that you'll need. So keep making these with the 4mm. So I've made 3 little beaded sections here, first of all with the 4mm. And then to start the next one, I'm just going to start in the same way to begin with. So I'm going to bring my beads all the way down here on the outer cords, one on each side. First of all, we're just going to still just use that single bead on the outside, and then I'm going to then take the cord, bring it underneath in towards the middle, one side at a time, and then start out getting that angle. But this is then where we want to start upping the size of the bead in the middle. So we're starting out in the same way here, but then we're going to just make it a little bit different after. So getting both sides in this position. So as if we were going to add another 4mm, but if we're not, we're going to use a 6mm now for this one. So we then need to add our next cords down in size, so that's these two. I'm just going to take one at a time because we need to make the spacing better for obviously the larger bead as well, so it fits nicely. I'm just going to go towards one end of it, bring that underneath the cord that's going out to the side. Just start on one side here and hold on to it there, and then we're going to attach this first of all, because obviously otherwise right now it's loose. Just leave a little tail that we can hold on to. We're going to finish that off later on. And then I'm going to take the long end here, bring it back over the top and then back underneath, and then come up through the loop, like this, so it loops around the holding cord, but it's still loose, so it's not fast. If we let this go, it would come undone. And then do the exact same thing again, so the long end back over the top, back underneath, and then up through the loop. Always make sure it comes up through that loop there. That's what creates the knot. And now when we tighten this, it's going to form our knot, and we can let go and it won't come undone. Just make sure you push them together and then tighten the knot nicely. So there we go, and then you just got to push this down to sit right next to the previous one. And then it's basically continued the row a bit. You want to do the same on the other side. Obviously working with opposite hands, so take one end, leave a short tail, bring it underneath, and then bring it, the long end, around the top, back underneath, and then come up through the loop. And tighten it. Don't lose your grip too much. And try and hold that holding cord nice and tight so we have something to work around. And then repeat to get it so it fastens. And then we tighten it here. Make sure to push them together and then tighten. And you can let go and then push it all the way down. So there you go. You can see we now continued both rows, and they're longer than they were up previously. So then what we need to do is also add in our next bead. So take your 6mm bead now and add that onto the two middle cords again, both through the same hole here in the same direction. Push that all the way up. You can see it's going to fit in there. And then we need to make the curve going around. So basically it's the exact same that we did before. So what I'm going to do is take the very outer cord, bring it in towards the middle, and we can separate the two middle cords again if you need to. And then have it come around the side of the bead, making that curve. So what I'm going to do is take the first cord here, which is actually the one that we just attached, and that's coming then underneath, and that's the first working cord. So make a double half hitch and then tighten this, and start, as you're tightening your knots now, move the holding cord here a little bit more in towards the middle again to help create that curve. Another one to make it the double, like that. And then we take the one from the middle that's coming through the bead, do the same thing, tighten that so that also traps the bead in place. There we go, that's one side. Now go to the other side and repeat the exact same thing but in a mirrored image. Just want to fully tighten that up again. Make sure you bring the outer one in over all the others towards the middle, and then the first one there that we just attached comes back towards the side underneath, and then we make a double half hitch with that. Tighten it, and then we start that curve off. You can see there it's starting to form nicely around the bead. And take the last cord we haven't used, the one that's coming out from the bead now, continue the row, and then all we have left is that midpoint where we need to connect the two sides. So just cross one over the other, and like previously, make sure you cross the same ones over and under each other just to keep it nice and consistent, to then close up that little gap and tighten that nicely. So there we go, that's how you add in the 6mm bead. So it's really the same technique. All that's different about it, obviously it's larger, but we added in that extra cord to accommodate for that. So then to move to the next one here, where we need to add in a new 6mm bead, we just start out the same way. So the two middle ones coming down here, we need to then bring the next one, so that's now the middle one out of the three on one side, comes underneath first of all. Again, start on one side, work on one side at a time, and then make a double half hitch like that, and tighten it up nicely. Again, getting those angles in place, and then on the other side I'm just going to do the same. Get the middle one underneath the inner one, and then make your double half hitch, because what we're then going to do is use the outer ones to add those beads on the outer edge for some more embellishment. So just get these ones in place, and then we need to add our beads to these two here. So now, because obviously we're using the larger beads in the middle, we have a bigger bridge to gap here with the outer beads, so I need to add some more than just the one. So I'm actually adding 3 on both sides, and then again push them all the way down, because they're going to then just fit perfectly to come around there. You can see they're going to fit nicely with the cord that's coming out. Same on the other side. Add them, push them all the way down, and then we need to connect it and fasten them in place by bringing that outer cord underneath the holding cord, and then make your double half hitch. And then when you tighten this, make sure that those beads stay out there on the outer side, because that's then what captures them in place. To make a full double half hitch, and like that. Same on the other side. Push them all the way down and bring it underneath the holding cord to then make a double half hitch. And then tighten that nicely. And you can see we have those beads sitting nicely just there. And it's just obviously a bit different than just adding that single one at the top. But then all that's left to do now is add the middle bead, so the 6mm one, and you then just otherwise repeat this, add that, and then when we get to the outer edge, add the 3 again, and again add however many you want of these. Now I'm going to be adding 3 of the 6mm as well as I did of the 4mm, and then we get to the middle section. So after the third 6mm bead, we then need to move on to the middle section, which is the 8mm beads we're going to be using. So same principle really, we're starting out the same way, starting out that angle in there with the 2 rows of knots, and I've also added those 3 beads on the outside. But then to make space for the larger bead in there, we need to attach a new length of cord. So these are the shorter ones, and you just want to attach them in the exact same way to the outer cords there, so the holding cords. So just leave a little tail there and bring it around. Remember to go through that loop and then repeat. And then we can tighten that, so exactly like I showed you before, and then push that all the way down to then be an extra cord now on these rows. And the same thing on the other side, just using opposite hands. Put your tail underneath and then bring the long end around the holding cord, going through that loop to then create the knot that fastens it in place. And tighten it and then push it all the way down. So there we go, we now have that extra cord there. So then what we need to do is add our bead to the 2 very middle cords, just like we've done all the other times, and drop it all the way down to sit in the middle. You can see it's going to fit nicely there, and then repeat like all the other times. All the difference is now is we have an extra cord to work with again, so bring the holding cord back in towards the middle to then help start off building that curve. And then you want to grab the very next cord, make sure you grab the right one, so the one that we basically just attached, and make a double half hitch, tighten that, just like this here, working our way towards the middle again, going around the bead, grab the next one, which is the one that we previously added the outer beads with, continue to make that curve. You can always check against the bead to obviously make sure you're kind of going in the right direction. And then we need to grab the cord that's coming through the bead. So separate them out, and then I'm just taking the one that's on the left side, make a double half hitch with that. Make sure you tighten this nicely, because then this holds the bead in place, just like that. And then repeat on the other side. So take the holding cord back in towards the middle, over all the others, and then start making your knots with 1 cord at a time, starting with that new one, and then taking the very next one, building up this row of knots, working our way back in towards the bead. Just make sure it sits nicely. like that, and then grab the very last cord, and this is the one coming out from the bead. Make a double half hitch and then tighten that, and then just make sure it's going to sit nicely there around the bead. And there we go, and all that's left to then do is connect the two together just like all the other times. So make your double half hitch with these two holding cords. And there we go. Now that the large bead is caged in place. So then here, because we're adding in the 8mm beads in the middle, again we have a bigger spacing than we did previously, so I need to add more beads on the outer edge. And what I'm doing is adding 4 instead of the 3 to then reach that gap nicely for the next section down here. And of course, again, do that on both sides. Just get the last one there, push it all the way down, and then we just need to start on the exact same way as before. So the 2 middle ones are going to be the holding cords, and just start on one side at a time. Take the first one underneath to then continue those rows at an angle going out to the side, making the double half hitches, and then the next one bring it underneath, make your double half hitch, and again, like always, make sure you hold the holding cord in the direction that we want the row to go. And the final one with the beads, to then also cage in the beads and make them stay where we want them to, just like that. Fasten that nicely, and you have the beads in place. Same thing on the other side, go back to the middle, so grab that holding cord and then take the next one coming underneath, make your double half hitch, and always grab the very next one here and bring it under, working your way further out, building up this row, which is basically the first half of the rows that are going to kind of capture the bead, cage it in, and create those curves along the sides, so like that. And then otherwise, we then reach the point here, we need to add in that bead in the middle, so just go back to the 2 middle cords, just like that, and then grab your large bead again, and just like the other times, make sure you put both cords through the bead in the same direction, and then drop it all the way down, so it looks like that. So basically now you just want to continue with the row, just like all the other times, around the bead going back in towards the middle, and obviously that captures it in place once you use the cords that are coming out through the bead. And then you want to repeat this however many times you want to add these larger beads. Now I'm going to be adding 4, but then otherwise we'll then reach the point where we need to start getting rid of some cords again, because obviously we need to taper down on the other side here instead of adding cords. So then we're at the point where we need to start graduating downwards again. So instead of having added a cord, we actually need to now take one away. So we need to take the one that we added last, is the one we need to take away now. So that means the 2 outer ones. So just take them and put them out of the way, just like that. And then we need to kind of get back to the area where we're using the 6mm. So also for that reason, what I'm going to do is on the outer cords, the outer edge with beads, is going to be 3 again, just like we did in between the beads of the 6mm in the middle. So just like that there. And otherwise you then want to just start out the same way. So take the cord from the middle, and then start making your double half hitches, and then also capturing those beads in place. Get that little curve. You can see we then get a smaller curve again, so it also gets nicely graduated on the outer edge. Move to the other side and do the same thing. Cage these beads in place as well. Make sure we have the little curve on the beads. So like that. And then we need to add that 6mm bead to the 2 middle cords. Again, just like all the other times, going through in the same direction, and then push that all the way down. And then you just want to continue in the same way otherwise. Cage this in by making the rest of this section, and then you want to make the same amount of 6mm beads here as you did on the other side if you want it symmetrical, obviously. And then otherwise, you've done them. Then you want to move to the 4mm ones by again just getting rid of the outer cord before you add the 4mm, and then you only add that 1mm, that one bead, sorry, on the outer edge. So you really have this side end up looking the exact same as the first side that we did. So that's what you want to keep doing until you reach the end. So I then reached the other end here, and we then basically completed the whole main part of the bracelet. All that's left to do is finish off this end because we have the loop on the other end already. We just have to add the button to this one. So we've ended up here with that final section where I added the 4mm round, and then we have these two lengths of cord in the middle where we just connected them right there at the point. Now the first thing we need to do is, just like we did in the beginning, we made a square knot after we made the loop. So I'm just going to do that. So the two outer cords here around those two middle cords. Make a square knot to kind of get our cords into position. So just a regular square knot here, both halves of it. The cords are getting a bit short, but it's going to be fine. And tighten that nicely. And then we have these two in the middle, the two holding cords. We need to add now a button onto them. So we have this shank button where we just have that one loop on the back of it. And we need to add both the cords through that loop in the same direction, and then get the button all the way down here. So I'm then going to push it down, and because obviously this is the front of my bracelet, I've got pointing upwards away from my board. I'm just going to make sure that the button faces that direction as well. So then to kind of cage that in, we need to use the two outer cords again and basically make another square knot, but now underneath the button. Make sure you tighten it underneath here, and then tighten it all the way under it. So pull it tight and make the other half as well. Because that then really traps it in place. Just get the cord up through the loop on the other side, like that. And then what I just like to do is, because there's still some space on the other side of the button, I like to just do an extra square knot. It just adds that little bit more security rather than just the one knot. That's just my personal preference. So just repeat the same thing, making that square knot around those two holding cords, and then the other half. And then all that's really going to be left to do once we've done this is get rid of all the excess cords. So both on this end here, but then also the ones that we have throughout the midsection of the bracelet where we added in and then took away the cord again. So that's now that button in place. So that's ready. And we can then take this off the board. And we then here have the bracelet so far. Obviously, like I said, what there's left to do now is get rid of all this excess cord. So then I'm just going to show you how we do that. It's just the same on all of them. Now because I'm using a synthetic cord, I can cinch down the ends with a lighter. If you're using a natural cord, you're going to have to use some glue. But what I'm going to do is take a pair of scissors and then cut off the excess of the cord, but making sure to leave just a short little end. Something like that. And then I'm going to get my lighter out. Now obviously be careful because it's a naked flame and it does get hot. But then I'm going to just take that and singe it down so it basically melts, and then push it in, because that gets rid of it, but it also seals it in place so it's not going to come undone. And it just makes it nice and seamless so we still keep the pattern there. And you just want to do that with all of them along the way. So now I've removed all the excess cord all the way along. You can see that's what it looks like. So we have that graduation from the beginning where we started with the loop, and then starting with the smaller beads, and then the mid-sized beads, and then the large ones right there in the middle. And on the other side, moving downwards again. So you have the nice graduation that's going to sit nicely on the wrist. And also the button there is going to fit just perfectly to be a closure with the loop, and nice and easy to take on and off as well. So that's what the bracelet looks like. So a nice and easy one, we get a really nice effect. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching.